So we'll call the Board of Supervisors for the Sheriff County Board to order. This evening, you guys could speak about 6 inches away from the mic and directly into the mic. We'll try that. Hopefully everybody can hear us. Okay, can you hear us now? Okay, out there?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. All right, so we'll start out with roll call. And I'm present.
Mr. Kirschner is excused this evening.
Okay. And then we'll stand now for the silent prayer and the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, you were all sent an agenda. Is there any additions or corrections to that agenda? Not, I look for a motion to approve. Motion by Oakley, second by Peterson. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? All right, so that passes. You're also sent the minutes of the October 21st, 2025.
Regular meeting. Is there any additions or corrections to that? Okay,
Motion to approve.
a motion by Wadle. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Bossard. Any discussion?
All in favor? Opposed? All right, so that passes as well. Okay, at this time, we'll have the 2026 budget public hearing. We'll open up the floor. If anybody would like to speak to the budget at all from the public. Okay, seeing none, then we'll close the 2026 budget public hearing. We had nobody register for public comments this evening, so we'll move right into unfinished business. A is discussion possible motion action items. The first is the opioid funding request for program fees and rent. That's a request from October's board meeting for additional information.
That's correct. So in your packet, there was an additional letter from the applicant, going back further in his history of use, that he had shared that it was not just alcohol and meth, that he also had been addicted to other narcotics for painkillers and heroin at one time. And then you also should have received correspondence from the Shines regarding what their program fees are. So he is requesting up to $1,500 to help with sober living, rent, and program fees.
Okay, is there a motion for this? A motion by King. Is there a second? Oh, second. Second by Bossard. Any discussion?
Just a question. So sustainability beyond you know what's going to happen. Or
We have to.
there's a program thing that you'll be able to spend on social media after that, since we know that or not.
I don't know that for sure, but he has been, according to the program, he has been actively participating in the program. The hope is that I do believe that he is now starting to work, that he will be able to then be able to transition out of sober living into his own apartment and be able to maintain on his own.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, then we'll go ahead and vote on that.
Supervisor Mosley and Supervisor Bossard.
Yes. Okay, so the motion passes. Consideration possible action on the following ordinance. Ordinance number 702, an ordinance repealing Waushara County Code Chapter 26, Article 2. Ordinance number 35, large gatherings. Is there a motion for this? Motion by Peterson, second by Piaski. Is there any discussion?
What ordinances kind of pick up and make this one no longer necessary?
So they would be, some of them would be covered by zoning provisions. Some of them would be covered by mostly it would be in the zoning code. The fact is that this ordinance was adopted in 1970. And since that time, we can't find any indication that a permit has ever been granted. So I think that it's just not being used. There are provisions in chapter where the noise ordinance, you have to have a special permit from the sheriff's department if you're going to exceed that for a group activity. Zoning would cover some of that. If it's in one of our parks, then our parks ordinance would cover some of that. So it's something that we haven't been seeing being utilized. It certainly is something that we could continue to keep. And then I would, if that's the decision of the board, then I would request that it go back to the executive committee or someone to establish a fee and a procedure and a form on how to apply for a permit, because none of that currently exists. When we were looking at it, Desiree was not able to find anything in the county clerk's office that had any applications for permits, any type of fee, no documentation on when a fee had last been established. So that's why it kind of came about as, well, maybe we don't need it on the books anymore.
So, because this was, my understanding is this ordinance was created for like large gatherings, like if someone wants to do a Woodstock type event in their farming field close to a residential area or something.
That would be covered under zoning. If it is in an unincorporated municipality, zoning does have provisions for that of what they can do, and they you would most likely need a conditional use permit. For instance, they have granted conditional use permits for events that take place like twice a year on certain property. So those type of things are covered by zoning in different areas where you would need a conditional use permit to handle that. If it was, I don't know if zoning would get involved if it was a one-time thing. That's something certainly that we could explore further to see if they had been doing it. Right now, I can tell you there just is no process for this. So it's not something that needs to come off the books, but if we keep it, then we need to have a better understanding of when it should be applied for and what that process is, so that we can get that information out to make sure that we are making, are being consistent with having people apply for permits.
So that this isn't like where a group is pushing for this ordinance to be done away with because they want to do some kind of event, or it just seemed weird that it came up.
I think that Desi had gotten a request about whether or not we had something like that. And we looked at it and we couldn't find any evidence that it had been used. And I said, well, if we're not using it, maybe we should just repeal it, is how it came about. It was not anybody that had come to us and tried to get a permit and we denied a permit or anything like that. There was just a random question that came to the county clerk's office about what is your process, or was it on your listserv, Desi? On my what? On your county clerk.
No
question.
I had somebody call and asked about doing something, and then we started looking, they wanted to do some type of gathering.
Oh, and it wasn't even,
In a
it
park.
was small, it wouldn't even have met this requirement.
So I
because-
started digging into this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, somebody was wanting to do something in one of our parks or
any park, yeah. he
in a
did it.
park, like a small gathering, though, not even a large gathering, it wouldn't even require this, so we directed that person to the Parks and Facilities Department to, if they wanted to reserve a shelter, if they were looking, what they were looking for, to meet there, but what they were describing wouldn't even have fallen under the terms of this ordinance, and so then we started talking about this ordinance and brought forth that.
All right. Thanks.
Yep.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll proceed to vote on this.
Supervisor Bonsard,
Yes.
Okay, so the motion passes. That'll be taken off the books then. All right, we'll move into new business with reports and presentation. First is our county administrator's monthly report, their administrator Megan Camp.
Okay, so I will start out with something positive. So last month, a handful of us, Chair Jarvis, myself, and several employees from the Sheriff's Department and EMS as well, all were able to go down to Madison to honor one of our deputies. Deputy Brian Wenzel was named First Responder of the Year for the 57th Assembly District. And so that was presented to him by Representative Kevin Peterson for his actions, quick actions involving a water rescue event that he participated in. So if you happen to see him, make sure you pass along congratulations for that. Last week, I attended a school safety meeting, and I'll also be attending the quarterly meeting next week, and we'll continue to discuss and debrief some of the recent school safety related events with an eye for areas for improvement with those. From some committee items, just to make sure that you guys are aware of, in case you're not aware, the Public Works Committee is currently soliciting the public's input and entertaining the idea of swapping State Highway 152 with County Road P with the state. So at this point, mailers have been sent out to landowners along those routes. There's been communications in the Argus as well. So certainly nothing has been determined yet at this point, but we're just soliciting the public's feedback on that. So if you have any input to share on that, please make sure you pass that along and get that over to Highway. Excuse me. The Economic Development Corporation continues to meet. We've had 2 out of our 4 meetings in the Community Economic Development Assessment. We're working with UW Extension on that. First meeting was review and discussion on some trends and data within the county. Second meeting started reviewing a SWOT or strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges analysis regarding our community capitals. And the group has identified natural capital as Waushara County's greatest capital asset. We did also receive that hub zone designation earlier this year. Ruth and I are going to be meeting with John from the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation so that we can come up with a plan for rolling that out to our local businesses and getting an educational presentation together for them so they know what it is, what benefits it has, and what they need to do for that hub zone certification to become a certified business for that. The Facilities and Parks Committee, just to update you on the remodel of the old highway shop there. So the Facilities Committee had made the determination a while back to move forward with remodel of the highway shop for the medical examiner. There's been a fair amount of time put into developing some plans and putting those out to bid. Unfortunately, those bids have come back not very favorable. And so at this point, we are pivoting a little and scaling back on those plans so that we can find something that's more palatable for the budget for a remodel to still meet the needs of the medical examiner over there. On the personnel front, we just had open enrollment period ended last week for our employees. We are continuing to struggle with filling some vacancies or having vacancies, I should say, in the jail and dispatch area. So we're continuing to work through recruitment there. I am happy to report that Highway is very soon to be down to 0 vacancies there. So that's great news. Also, if you recall, Initiative 1 training that we've talked about, we've been doing some think tanks with staff members throughout the year. Our public health officer had spoken during her annual report about her conference attending Initiative 1, I think earlier this summer. So we had a group from the health department along with myself and our HR director complete the leadership transformation process starting last year and going into this year. Public Health was able to secure a grant that's going to allow us to go through the train the trader model through Initiative One. So that will help us to be able to spread that through our organization a little further. So we're excited to move forward with that for greater impact throughout the organization. And then just several follow-ups I want to share with you following up from the October board meeting. So as directed regarding the K-9 payments, Attorney Zalesky worked with our treasurer to calculate interest owed on the K-9 payments. And that correspondence was sent to Sheriff Silky on October 30th, requesting repayment for that. Regarding the directives to explore 911 operations and policies. October 30th, Lieutenant McElroy did send out the dispatch policy manuals as requested to EMS, emergency management, police chiefs within the county, and it was also sent to county fire districts. Immediately after the last board meeting, I met with Lieutenant McElroy and our emergency management director, Alan Lucchini, to start some initial discussions on the reporting structure of 911 and physical location. Also put together a work group that met last week, and we will also be meeting again next week, starting to have some discussions around, again, reporting structure, potential partnerships with other counties, and the creation of a 911 board. The creation and appointment to a 911 board will be going to public safety tomorrow night to that committee meeting. I've also had initial contacts with Marquette County to kind of gauge interest if it's a good timing to start exploring if we can do something collaboratively with them. So that's where we're at with 911 review and discussions. Regarding the current investigations going on in the Sheriff's Department, the Attorney Winstrom, who's been assigned to the investigations regarding the harassment and employment related issues. He has been on site a couple of days now to start working through those investigations and interviews with individuals. He will also be on site again next week. He is also going to be doing a review of personnel files of all current, all active employees in the Sheriff's Department and a handful of others as well. Ruth has been in contact with Brian Nee from Charles Taylor regarding hiring an independent investigator to investigate some of the other, the discrimination and performance claims of the Sheriff's Department. The first investigator that they tried to hire did decline, and so they're still working on trying to identify potential investigators for that. So hopefully more to report on that later. That's it.
Okay, very good. Does anybody have any questions for Megan?
Okay, thank you very much. All right, next we'll go into the Department of Veterans Annual Report with our Veterans Director, William Rose.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking some time tonight to listen to me blather. I'm going to be brief, not so much brilliant, but definitely I've got the brevity down. For those who don't know me, I am Bill Rose now. I served 8 years in the Navy, 16 in the Army National Guard, combat with both forces. I put on the mantle of CVSO in 2009 following my retirement from the military. Let me see if this thing will work for me.
You have to turn it on, it doesn't work.
There we go. All right, it's going to be very brief. 2024 in brief. I'm going to look at where we're at right now and ultimately where we're going. In 2024, we did see an increase in the veterans population. Just to clarify, when we lose a veteran, there's just as much, if not more, work involved in losing a veteran than there is in gaining one on the paperwork side. Brian and I did 143 claims, 76 appeals for primary compensation benefits. That does not include things like education benefits, etc. We met individually with 551 veterans that produced close to 4,000 different communications and close to 2,000 different forms for primary compensation benefits. into the pockets of Alachua County veterans and survivors. There were a little over $16 million in direct compensation. We hit retroactive checks. That's the compensation dollars that accrued during the pendency of a claim. Close to 1.7 million in retro pay. We are now managing 9,615 records, which is up 207 from the previous year. We've been undergoing a digitization process over the last couple of years. And we're finding a lot of records that were never officially accounted for in the deceased files. So now we're actually turning those into actual files. One of the things that I handed out was gross distribution of expenditures for 2024. That is the one pager. Prime driver for my office continues to be economic impact because that's very measurable. But I do want to talk about the fact that the Department of Defense is the largest department in the United States with the largest budget. And the men and women who put themselves in harm's way to protect our way of life deserve nothing more than to be cared for. We have a national moral obligation to do that. So meeting that obligation does come with a price tag. It's relatively small, and the return is extremely large. To put it in perspective, veterans compensation from a purely mercenary standpoint is the 8th largest economic driver in the state of Wisconsin. When we're talking about federal VA benefits, we're talking about an industry that equals the beef industry here in Wisconsin. And primarily that's being conducted by 2 to 5 people in each county. I just need you to put that in perspective in your brain for a second. The return on investment in this office is unmatched in any other agency in the state. A couple other things. The digitization process in 24, we managed to get half of those paper files digitized. Okay, so where are we at right now? Budget versus backlog. You can't get blood from a turnip. We are in dire straits budgetarily. I get it. Administrator Cap and I met very shortly after the September meeting and looked at some efficiencies to try to eliminate the backlog in my office, increase responsiveness, and try to get into the backlog. Towards that end, we did make a change in our office hours to 4:10s, which gives us time beforehand, after normal working hours. So that's uninterrupted work. Already looking into the strategic plan for next year, and we're working on that. One of the things I'm looking at is rolling to a telephone management system. I did talk with some others that have done that previously. And although it initially gets public backlash, it pays dividends because it makes us more productive, because it puts us in control of, in a proactive role rather than reactive. Right now, business is booming. Just think about those 24 numbers. And right now, we have already had met with 459 different veterans this year. That's 3,300, almost 3,400 communications, 1,505 forms. We almost doubled the amount of claims this year already from last year. 236 claims, 136 appeals. Our retro checks are already at 1.2 million, and we are projecting compensation for this year to come in at $19 to $20 million into the pockets of veterans in Alachua County. Where are we going? More of the same, not less of it, unfortunately. We are facing a changing veterans demographic. We have tipped the scales from the Vietnam veterans who are currently dying off to primarily Gulf War and subsequent war veterans. A little bit about that. Just one piece of that is the toxic exposures. The toxic exposures for our Vietnam vets were primarily herbicides, weaponized herbicides that had long-term health effects. To put it plainly, those herbicides are one of the emissions that were detected coming out of the mass burn pits in Iraq and Afghanistan. The toxic exposures our current crop of veterans have suffered make Agent Orange look like candy. The health effects stemming from those exposures are extremely complex and only partially understood. That's going to increase the workload. It's going to further increase the complexity of the claims that Brian and I do. Another complicating factor is the way we've been using veterans since 2006. We started following an ARFIGEN model, which means we started using the National Guard and Reservists more to fulfill combat roles. And we're using those individuals instead of one combat tour. Now in a 6-year tour of duty, it's not unusual to be in a combat theater 4 or 5 times. Population versus impact. Yes, we do have a shrinking population of veterans, but it's because we're in an all volunteer force rather than the draft force that we had prior to 1980. And we're using those veterans more and more and more. So we're not making more, we're just using them more. Because of the shrinking population, the legislative eye is drifting from the veterans, both at the federal and state level. I'm going to talk about that real quick. We're looking at the VA with a real concentration, specifically in primary claims, in production over quantity. They're actually starting to distance our ability to communicate directly with them. We're looking at the privatization of VA healthcare. That has become a well-known secret. Unfortunately, I'm starting to see an increase in medical appeals because that private industry is starting to put profit over patient outcomes. I'm starting to hear some regionalization rumblings, looking at reducing the amount of county veteran services across the state and potentially, well, unsure because there really is no plan to replace us. But it looks like the thought process is regionalized state offices. That's going to increase driving distance to and from to get services. We'd have less people serving the veterans we have now. And to put it plainly, we're already overworked. That's statewide. We're starting to see an increase in violent crimes from this new crop of veterans. We're starting to see more incarcerated female veterans, primarily drug offenses. That reintegration process and the care that they need while they're incarcerated is just another complexity to the disability claims process. We already saw here at the state level a pullback on the focus on homeless veterans. The suicide rate used to be 22 a day. They still say that. It's starting to increase. Now with the state failing to fund the Veterans Housing and Recovery Program and the Veterans Outreach and Recovery Program, 2 of the only successful programs to rehouse veterans and their families who are facing housing insecurity. I really don't like the direction our federal government and our state government are going when it comes to focusing on veterans. I put another thing on your desk. It's called Windicators. That was Professor Steve Geller with the University of Wisconsin Extension, Department of Agriculture and Applied Economics. It talks about and backs up the language that we are basically a cash cow that may be facing a grinder. I am subject to your questions.
Okay, well, Bill, first of all, thank you for your service. I don't know if anybody's probably ever said that. you would say
My
it.
privilege.
Yeah, appreciate it. And does anybody have any questions for Bill?
No, I had asked you to go see a homeless vet in Watoma, and you did, and I guess you didn't get a very good response, but I appreciate that you did do that, so thank you.
You bet. He's got my card. It's gonna get cold soon.
Anybody else? Thank you. Very good. I
Thank you.
report there. Appreciate it. Okay, next we'll go into the Department of Child Support Annual Report with our Child Support Director, Kimberly Stebbins.
Good evening, everybody. Veterans is always a hard act to follow, but here I am. Well, we love our veterans and we love our kids, so let's talk about our kids. My name is Kim Stebbins and I'm the Child Support Director in Waushara County. I've been the director here for 13 years. I have 19 years of overall experience in child support. Just to overview our organizational chart. So we have me, which is the director, and I have 3 child support specialists. I put Ruth up there. She's our child support attorney. She handles all of our filings for motions and actions, and she attends court hearings with me when needed. Services we provide to families, reduce poverty rates, establish parental rights, ensure children have access to health care, and promote the involvement of both parents in their lives of their children. So one of the things we do is paternity establishment, which is legal fatherhood. We get referrals from Department of Human Services most often. And what we need to do is make sure that every child has a father on their birth certificate. That can also, with our involvement, we can make sure that fathers have rights to their children, and parties can come together and hopefully come to agreement on custody and placement. But if not, we provide them access to family court so they can make sure that a fair process is involved for the best interest of their children. We establish support orders, enforce those orders, and would modify them as needed. Another thing that we make sure to do is get a health insurance order. And what that means is that if a child is on Badger Care, which is a public assistance program, we would make sure that the court orders that if health insurance is available at a reasonable cost through somebody's place of employment, that they carry the private insurance for their children. And then Badger Care most often would be secondary. So we're trying to reduce the public assistance dollars and get them access to private health insurance plans. Excuse me. We also refer parties to employment and training programs. There's a child support liaison that is contracted through the state of Wisconsin, and we can refer somebody who is struggling with barriers to employment or just barriers in general, and they can get in touch with different programs that our office wouldn't be able to do. So we can refer people and try to get them employed or overcome the barriers. What we also do is recognize domestic violence. We can also refer people with resources and allow for safety modifications if we recognize or if someone comes to us and says that there is a concern. You know, we often think of domestic violence as physical, but it's also financial abuse. So what we want to do is make sure that there's financial security for families. And I put a little tidbit up here. Financial security is the single biggest predictor of whether a victim is able to leave and create a safe, violence-free home for them and their child. Child support agencies are connectors. So as you can see, we connect to several different agencies, the court system. We get our referrals from the social service programs, and then we can connect them to the court system by our involvement. We can connect them to the child support liaisons or other employment and training programs. We can get them in touch with community partners, If someone is a veteran, I would refer them over to Bill's office, or if someone needed an advocate, there is CAP services for domestic violence advocates. So we can recognize what someone might need and get them in touch with those services. We celebrated the 50th anniversary of the child support program this year. So in 1974, Gerald Ford had signed the Social Services Amendments of 1974 and created the Federal Child Support Program in 1975. So it's been 50 years. And each Wisconsin county has a child support agency, and there are 11 tribes currently that have their own child support agency. That number has grown over the years, which I think is a wonderful thing. Just a little fun fact, Bushare County has only had 2 child support directors. So I'm the second in line, and apparently I like it enough I've been sticking around. But you know, workers tend to stay in the program or come back to the program. I think that working in child support has been a wonderful experience for myself. I really enjoy it. I found that with my colleagues as well, that it's just a very fulfilling career. Child support modernization. So on the left, you'll see the black screen. It's very old. That's our current system. It's called KIDS. It's very outdated. It's hard to train. We have the limited ability to update and implement interfaces. So currently, in the last governor's budget, there was funding for the Thrive system, which is a new modernization system. And I went down to Madison this February and advocated for the new governor's budget to say, hey, please continue the funding for the modernization, because it needs to continue on. We need to have more efficiencies. The old system just isn't going to work in the future. And with our efforts, along with the state's efforts, it did remain in the governor's budget. So hopefully, eventually that program will come to fruition. I wanted to go over our primary revenue sources. Of course, this is a budget meeting tonight, but it's important to know like how we primarily get our money. So we're very heavily federally and state funded. So we have performance-based incentives. We have 4 federal performance measures that we have to meet every federal fiscal year. And if we meet those, we would get incentive money through our grant. We also get general purpose revenue, our GPR, from the state. And finally, our last primary source is 66% match on any of our expenditures. So any expenditures I have, we report it to the state through a system, and then we get 66% back in federal match dollars. We have other sources of revenue, not as much, but still comes into play. So birth cost recovery. If we recover birth costs, which is the cost that Badger Care pays for a child's birth, we would get 15% of what we collect on that. We also get incentive funding for, as I talked earlier, adding private health insurance to a Badger Care eligible child. We would get incentive money for doing that. We also get indirect cost claims that we can submit for reimbursement. So when Sarah and our indirect cost auditor provide me with those numbers, we can submit that for the 66% revenue source. Get a small amount in program income. That's not very much. And then finally, after all said and done, that's when the county levy comes into play. So a couple of years ago, it's like federal fiscal year 24 and 25, we had the governor's budget increased child support funding by $5 million per fiscal year. That was through a lot of legislative efforts, going to Madison, talking to our representatives. So the governor's budget did increase. That helped our funding a lot. And that has continued in the next governor's budget. I put on the screen just a little history of what my expenses were from 2023 and then what the county levy was. So you'll see in 2023, 48,000 was the county levy that was adopted out of $384,000 in expenses. And then after the increased funding, you know, you'll see that the levy amount needed has dropped significantly. If you're still following along and paying attention, you'll see at 2026 expenses, you'll see that has increased by $43,000. No, we did not get huge raises in child support. We had actually taken over an IT expense so that we could get some federal reimbursement money. So that's why that increased, if you were wondering. And then we actually are at a 0 levy request this year. That primarily is because of the indirect cost claims. Those increased significantly because of the building. So we were able to claim that and actually reduce our levy request. Okay. So we have, as I mentioned earlier, we have child support performance standards. We have 4 categories that we have to meet federal performance in. And for federal fiscal year 25, that just ended September 30th. So we met performance standards in 3 of the 4 categories. On the left-hand side, you'll see for Waushara County's performance measures, court order establishment, current support, paternity, and arrears collections. And on the other side is statewide comparison. So you see that Waushara County is higher than the statewide average in collections. And while we did not meet the arrears collection rate, we increased our arrears collection by over 3% from the year before. And then we also had increased our current support collection by over 2%. So I think that is a win and we're heading in the right direction. And I'm very proud of my group of gals that are in my office. Just a little study that I wanted to point out, the IRP the IRP study from 2022 shows that receiving child support and having a high compliance order increases earnings of an adult, and it increases the likelihood that someone will be employed as an adult, as well as someone less likely to need SNAP benefits as an adult. So if a child is getting the financial needs that they need and security, we talk about financial security, later on in life, and this is proven through a study, that, you know, adults are going to be more successful and more secure themselves. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them now or later on. Appreciate all your time tonight.
Anybody have any questions for Kim?
With that, you have updated system. So is the state adopting that where they're going to switch to that, or?
Yeah, it's a state system that all the agencies run.
Yeah, I would, like, unsolicited advice, I would just not be an early adopter. Let them get the kinks worked out of that.
Yeah.
Talk to Tammy at Human Services. Say, it seems like the state doesn't like change.
Yeah.
So,
No, they'll be in phases, and I'm assuming they'll do like usually you know, test runs with different counties to see if it works or not before they let it. I think it's a few years out, you know, before they'll be ready, but we wanted to at least make sure that the funding was available, that they could keep going with what they need to do.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
very
Kim.
much.
Very good report. Thank you. Okay, next we'll move into discussion possible motion action items. First one is the county board supervisor compensation for the 2026 through 2028 term per Wisconsin statute 59.22, paragraph 1, paragraph A1. These rates need to be set by the county board prior to the earliest date for filing nomination papers. So is there a motion?
I would make a motion to leave them as they are.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to leave the rates as they are. Is there a second to that motion?
second.
Second by Mr. Urban. Is there any discussion?
Is this standard? We do this every time?
Yes, we do. Yeah, they're required by statute to be adopted before the earliest date for filing nomination papers, which December 1st would be the day that somebody could circulate and turn in.
I just thought there was no change to the, but it is.
Yeah, it does get adopted prior to the.
Can we elect official vote? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on that.
Supervisor Waddle,
Machine is on the fritz again. I got a nice pretty picture, that's all I got.
You can let me know what your vote is and I can enter it.
Yes.
Okay, and the motion passes. All right, next we'll have consideration possible action on the following resolution and ordinances. The first is resolution number 25-11-25, resolution approving the Washera County 2026 budget appropriation. Is there a motion for this?
And I motion to approve.
Okay, motion by Mr. Urban, second by Mr. Peterson. Is there any discussion?
Is this where I bring?
Gentlemen, you've been provided a copy of a proposed budget amendment to the proposed budget.
This would be to reinstate the $20,000 funding for Winnebago Waterways Program and reinstatement of $12,266 funding for the 0.25 regional crops educator position. This was re-added into the proposed budget because we have made a 3-year commitment to Winnebago Waterways. And this would be our 3rd year we're going into. In addition to that, we have gained $85,000 from Winnebago Waterways directly to our land conservation department for a $60,000 investment in being a member of this organization. In addition to that, we were notified that there is the potential for Washera County to receive funds up to about $533,000 from 2026 to 2028 through Winnebago Waterways. So a $20,000 investment is a very small price to pay for a potential return on investment of
$500,000
to our constituents in this county. They have consistently provided 141% return on the investment that we do provide for them to be a member of the board. In addition to that, we are doing this by revenues from within the land use, land conservation and zoning departments, and in salary savings from the University of Wisconsin Extension. So therefore, this amendment is nothing but gain for us. It costs us nothing. We aren't going to be borrowing anything, taking any money from undesignated funds. It's all paying for itself from the departments where it's coming from. So it's a zero change. As it says on your sheets provided, the overall tax levy and use of fund balances remains unchanged. There is no change to add these 2 items back in.
Okay,
Will you guys accept that amendment? We don't need a motion.
Yes, we would make a motion to.
Okay, a motion then to amend.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, motion by Weedle, is there a second? And seconded.
okay,
You vote on it first and then
Okay.
go back to it.
second,
She might need a second just to get that. in the
second by
system.
Mr. Bossert.
I need to first.
Okay, so if you understand that we're voting on just the amendment that Mr. Bossard brought up. And then after that, we'll vote on the complete budget.
Okay, so we're first voting on the amendment.
Yes. Okay, go ahead and vote on that then. On the amendment.
Supervisor Waddle,
Yes.
Supervisor Urban. Oh, you did it.
Okay, so the amendment passes. So with that, then we'll move on to the resolution number 25-11-25, which is the budget appropriation, the 2026 budget appropriation. And that was, motion was by Mr. Urban and second by Mr. Peters.
Is there any discussion on that, on the overall budget? Okay,
Can I just say thank you for all the hard work that went into getting it to where it is?
Absolutely.
thank you for saying that. All right. Okay. By Urban.
By Urban, second by Peterson.
Okay, all right, then go ahead and vote on that.
Supervisor Waddle,
Yes.
All right, and the budget passes. Thank you for that. All right, next we'll move into ordinance number 706. An ordinance to amend chapter 50, article 3, division 2, the county building locations have changed since ordinance adoption, necessitating a revision. So is there a motion for this? Motion by Yasi, is there a second? I'll second. Second by Bossard. Is there any discussion?
I have a question. Is that where they're talking about,
It's the parking lots one, yes.
So
where exactly is the?
That's behind, behind Attorney Olson's office. We have that garage there. We kept that parking lot in that garage so that we would be able to store some equipment there to help maintain our lot that has the Historical Property Society on. So that's that. It's that very small one. We have an easement with the landowner for part of it and own part of that land.
All right, is there any other questions?
Comments? All right, we'll go ahead and vote on that.
Supervisor Waddle,
Yes.
That ordinance passes as well. With that, then we'll move into the board suggestions for future agenda items. Yes, Mr. Bossard.
Yes, I would like to put forward that we put on the agenda the exploration of having all committee meetings either recorded or broadcast for public record.
Sounds good. And also I want to just point out that on Monday at exec at 2:00, we're going to be doing the administrator's performance review. Megan's been with us as our administrator for a year now, and so as for her contract, we do a review at this meeting. So I'd like to invite you all to come to that if you'd like to hear, or if you have any questions for that review. So that'll be on Monday at 2:00. All right, with that then, unless there's any other future agenda items, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Urban, second by Peterson. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.